Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being with us tonight, and thank you to Dr. Trentin for being here. Just a quick bio of Mia Gaia Trentin. She's an archaeologist working on digital humanities, and she's a fellow of the Society of Antiquaries of London. She has an interdisciplinary curriculum including archaeology, cultural heritage studies, and a PhD in social history, with a thesis on medieval graffiti along the northern Italian pilgrimage route. From 2017 until the beginning of 2024, she worked at the Cyprus Institute in the field of heritage documentation with a specific focus on digital tools and technologies for studying the Cypriot graffiti heritage. She investigates medieval and early modern written cultures in all aspects. Her expertise is in informal written communication, graffiti, focusing on written and visual expressions to recover past people's practices, attitudes, and approaches to their surrounding natural and anthropic space. Moreover, she is engaged in EU project consortia aiming to promote Cypriot graffiti within the academic community, education, and valorization through community involvement and citizen science. She has published the critical edition of two 18th century manuscripts for the National Hellenic Research Foundation and the Cyprus Research Center, and authored and co-authored various papers on graffiti interpretation and methodology. So good evening, everyone. Before starting, I would like, of course, to thank the Center for Visual Arts and Research, and specifically Rita Severis for inviting me and giving this opportunity to share with you the research has been done. And actually, preparing this presentation, I realized that this year will be 20 years since I started, at the beginning in a more relaxed way, to study the medieval and modern graffiti of Cyprus. So I decided that tonight it will be, of course, a lecture, but also sort of celebration, and I'm really glad to be here with you and share what these 20 years, what I discovered, and what more there's to discover, mostly. I said it's 20 years, and I also need to thank other Beyond colleagues and friends that are here tonight, but are also following online. I want to thank the Department of Antiquities because since the very beginning, they really show understanding and appreciation for medieval graffiti in a way that is still difficult to find in other countries. The various bishoprics, because most of the graffiti has been studies are in churches, so their collaboration has been fundamental to carry on the studies and do the documentation. And of course, last but not least, the Cyprus Institute, specifically the STARC Science and Technology and Archaeology and Research Center, and Andreas Pitta's Art Characterizations Lab, for their invaluable support during the last 6 years, where I carried on the two projects dedicated to the graffiti heritage of Cyprus. And I managed to discover and bring forward this field. So I can start. Let's see. Okay. So usually with the word graffiti, the first thing that comes to our minds are contemporary graffiti or street art. And our cities are covered usually with graffiti. I'm glad to see that there's also Konstantinos here tonight, that he is an expert, and I hope that soon we will connect our two fields. And so usually we think that graffiti is a contemporary phenomenon, but actually it's not like that. We know that, for example, the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum that were preserved intact as they were fully covered with graffiti and inscription, with slogans, comments, and drawings, scenes of everyday life, and whatever exactly as are our city today. Moreover, the term graffiti does not originate within contemporary graffiti in the last centuries, but back in the mid-19th century, exactly after the discovery of Pompeii and Herculaneum. So you can imagine the archaeologists that start digging and discovering these intact cities and start seeing that the walls were really crowded with old people's inscription drawings and of course the graffiti raised the interest of many scholars. The first that did an extensive study was Raffaele Garducci, and you see here the first two editions of his work on the graffiti of Pompeii. And he's considered to be the creator, the father of the one that coined the word graffiti, because you see the first edition that is dated 1854, that is about graffiti, but they are still called inscription graveutre. While in the second, he used the term graffiti, that in Italian means scratched, highlighting the characteristics of graffiti of being made with makeshift tools on any available surfaces by scratching and leaving a mark. After him, he was also the first understanding and stating two important things that we all know dealing with graffiti. So on one side, how difficult it is to notice graffiti and to document them. And the second is the importance of this source to give us information about everyday life. Having access to this written heritage is like having account from people going around the cities and living their everyday life. And the story is told by them, is not told by someone else that creates an historical, more traditional historical account. So he was very enthusiastic. He started promoting the study of graffiti. And what happens in the same period, so we are in the middle of the 19th century, we have someone else talking about graffiti, Flaubert, Gustave Flaubert, that during his trip in the East, he was in Egypt, and in his letters he complains about the presence of graffiti. Which graffiti? Graffiti that his contemporaries left on the main monument of Egypt in order to record their visit. So people for the grand tour were going around visiting the pyramids and other monuments, leaving their name. And here you can see one of these graffiti in the temple of Rames, and I think it's not by chance that the author is Gustave Flaubert Butler, that probably could not resist to leave his mark despite his master was complaining about this practice. So here we already see the two attitudes toward the graffiti study. One that really highlights the relevance of this source in giving a bottom-up perspective to history. So it's like the history told from the bottom, from everyday, from common people. And the other one that sees graffiti as vandalism or something that defaces the monument and is to be condemned. Of course, we are in the period where the concept of cultural heritage is start being consolidated. That's why Flaubert's reaction is so strong. Also because this graffiti that Flaubert, more than a century ago, was condemning are one of the main sources to recreate the history of the Grand Tour in the East, because we have the account, but comparing with the actual names, dates, and people that were there gives us really a different view, a more complete and extended picture of what was going on in those years. As we said, so vandalism and graffiti, or better, vandalism is related to graffiti, for us at least, due to the concept of cultural heritage. Concept that was born in the middle of the 19th century and was not present in the past. So it was normal, as Peter Sandram shows us in this picture, that people in a church would have approached the space, interacting with it, so praying, chatting in a corner, doing whatever, even writing on the walls. So in this sense, graffiti were not considered or condemned as something that were hindering the monument. It was a normal part of it. How? And once we understand this, we can start taking back the roots of graffiti as interaction with the space up to prehistory, actually. The trend in the field of graffiti study now is to see a fil rouge connecting rock art up to street art or contemporary graffiti as a way that the human being has always had to interact with the space through a graphic mean. So either with drawing, with text, one writing was invented. The man always showed this, this attitude and this interaction with the space, basically for two fundamental reasons. The first one is writing has a really strong mean of self-representation, mostly handwriting, so graffiti in this is great. I'm writing, it's me leaving my mark, leaving my handwriting. If we think about our signatures, they are authentic because people recognize that we did it. And anyway, even during the Middle Ages, by even making a single cross, it was a proof of authenticity because it was made by hand. So, first of all, self-representation, and the second, space appropriation. I am in a space, I feel comfortable or maybe not comfortable in that space, and I need to interact. I need to get in touch, leave a mark, and a sort of take appropriating of that area. We will see it better and explain it better through examples in a while. So, along this really long excursus from prehistory up to today, where does Cyprus fit? Of course, graffiti in Cyprus gives us, as we said, an insight about common people. Cyprus, being a multicultural island at the crossroad of East and West, is really very, very rich in all socio-cultural aspects and therefore also about graffiti. Here we have different communities, different languages, different social and cultural traditions that get together, maybe past a lot of travelers, maybe are more stable in the island, and they all contribute to create, to live, let's say, this, to live graffiti, and so to tell us their story. And the first graffiti we have in Cyprus are really pretty old, I would say. They are ships, pretty expected since it's an island, so it's the main mean to reach the island. And they are from Larnaca in Kitian, in the Temple 1, and in Encomi. And they are of the 12, both examples have been dated more around the 12th century BC. Since then, we have really a huge gap because as far as we know so far, the next graffiti we encounter are dated around the 8th, 9th century AD. So a pretty long distance between the two. This can be explained by various reasons. First of all, the fact that graffiti, of course, are very fragile. We see it from our everyday experience. They are something that are considered ephemeral. They are made not with the intent of lasting long, just for the impact of the impulse to communicate. So for sure, part of graffiti that probably were present in the island got destroyed, as it is normal for monuments and for objects from the past, and other maybe still need to be discovered. During my work in this year, I've never checked archaeological excavation, or I basically worked by survey, fieldworks, and on published material. But for example, I know that all the Roman period we have graffiti on pottery, so I would expect that we also had graffiti in houses or other public places. But I think that they just didn't, they are not preserved. And moreover, graffiti usually are on plaster or on very perishable surfaces, so it's really easy for them to be cancelled. Said that, so far you see a map here, roughly from the 9th until the 19th century. We counted 120 sites with graffiti. The number is increasing thanks to a lot of friends and colleagues that are around and that across the year they learned about graffiti. So I'm used to receive pictures. Do you know this graffito or do you know the other one? And really I feel very happy that there's a sort of little community that is paying attention and also mapping the island. Usually my friends really don't like me when I start talking about the graffiti because they say, after you explain us what the graffiti are, we start seeing them and they are everywhere. So it's like, really. So where specifically we find graffiti, as I said, nearly everywhere, depending if the monument or the surfaces are well preserved. We have urban structure like the Famagusta city walls, private houses like the house of the dragoman Haji Georgakis Kornesis here in Nicosia that is well preserved, so we have surfaces with graffiti and it's a private house. Even in Colossi Castle, in churches, of course, because they are within the better preserved monuments from the Middle Ages, and in natural spaces that have been turned, like the caves, has been turned into churches. So, as we said, why? No, next one, sorry. And what do we usually find in graffiti? We find both text and drawings. In Cyprus specifically, it's a bit challenging because, as I said, it's a multicultural island and we have at least 5 alphabets. I don't know how many languages. And so it's difficult every time to find the expert able to help and support for the text, and also for what concerns the drawings and all even the figurative and the abstract motifs. As you will see in a while, sometimes it's even more challenging. But I would say it's really a rich heritage that shows the richness of the visual culture and the exchange, and also the co-living of different communities, different traditions in the same spaces, sharing the space. Because, as I said, the key point for graffiti is people interacting with the space. So we can really see and analyze who was there, how they were feeling about that place, what they were doing, how they were approaching. So we can gather a lot of information that usually that are not reported and collected by other historical or archaeological sources. What I like about graffiti is that I usually tell this thing when I started back 20 years ago. Digital photography was not so developed, so I started copying, hand tracing all the graffiti. And the thing I like most is that in that moment I was copying the graffiti on the transparent. I was standing in the same place the people that made the graffiti was standing centuries before. I was doing the same movement, seeing most probably the same thing he was saying. So it was for 5 minutes, sometimes even 10, and you realize also the effort they had to put to do this. And there was this nice connection. And sometimes I sound romantic, but I mean, it's our. Is why I choose to be an archaeologist and not an engineer. So you can really feel like get in touch with the past. The past is there. This person is there and is trying. His messages start getting voice after centuries. We are very lucky in Cyprus too because beyond graffiti we have also people from the past. Here we are in 1518. Telling us about graffiti. As I said, graffiti is like something that people were doing probably every day. We have very few records, not only for Cyprus, but for all Europe and in general, about graffiti making. So it's not like today that we are lucky we can go and interview people making graffiti and asking why and what. In the past, yes, we cannot recall this information, but this pilgrim, this French pilgrim, Jacques Lesage, in 1518, landed in Cyprus. On his trip, he's French. He was in pilgrimage to the Holy Land, and while visiting, he reached Nicosia. He said he had a good breakfast and then went and visited Santa Sofia, and very naturally he reports that many pilgrims have made their marks and set their name on the walls. And then he saw and could recognize some of these of the name he was seeing on the wall. The important thing to notice here is that he has no. He's not commenting, criticizing. He's not saying what are they doing. He's pretty expected. He's reported just taking note of something that is pretty normal. In between, we are still, the graffiti he saw in 1518 that were already there are still, I hope they will still be on the main facade of the Selene Mosque, the former San Sofia Cathedral, and specifically this kind of graffiti that are Gothic, Latin, Western inscriptions of pilgrims coming from Europe heading to the Holy Land with coat of arms and names, sometimes dates. We know they are a specific, they represent a specific trend of the Middle Ages that has been studied extensively by Detlef Krak. Detlef Krak did this study about about the graffiti of nobles, European nobles visiting the European shrines, also in Cyprus, of course, but all across Europe and in the Holy Land. And he explained the fact that, for example, the nobility would have left graffiti following the use they had of putting flags or wooden signa outside the place they were lodging. He said at a certain point this material was perishable. Maybe they wanted also to do something more resistant, and they started writing names and leaving the coat of arms. So we see how from one medium and one tradition to highlight the presence of a noble outside a hostel, an inn, the space appropriation does a step forward. I'm not just announcing that I'm here, but I'm leaving my mark here. So even when I will leave that place, you will know, the person coming after me will know that I've been there. And this is one of the main reasons why people in the past made graffiti, to commemorate their visit, okay, and the passage from a place. Here you see some examples, mostly from Panayiotou Arca in Lagudera. I like these examples because you can see Latin graffiti, Western writers, probably of French origin, of the 15th century, but also in 18th century Greek graffiti. So you see how in a single piece of fresco we already start having different communities interacting. And then we have an example from Aios Nicholas Pistegis, a more recent one, an Arabic inscription with a date, and the coat of arms in Belapai Abbey at one of the columnette at the entrance of the church. Commemorative graffiti, as I was saying, can be both on with text or drawings or pictorial, and most of the time, not most of the time, sometimes here in Cyprus we have also we underline the fact that I was here. You see the formula hic fuit in Latin. That is exactly the translation is I was here. So it's not only I leave my name. I want you to know that that it's me. But of course I can leave my mark as stating my presence in a place also with identity marks. You see monograms, again of course coat of arms and a monogram, a really nice one, a Greek one. They're not with what is hopefully probably a coat of arms on the top. That is not so frequent in the Eastern tradition. But then commemorative graffiti, beyond recording the presence of someone, can also record events happening in that place. And these are really the one that I like between the text. Here you see some examples from Panagioia Matikina Rakapas and Aya Paraskevin Yeroskipou. So in the first one, they are commemorating the birth of George's son, Yorki, while in the second, another George in Paphos, in Yeroskipou, passed away. These are, for me, really nice examples because it's not only that someone is affirming his presence by writing, recording, in this case, not his presence, but something that happened, and this makes the space a repository of the social memory of the community. This has been studied. In Italy, we have a couple of examples where we have churches that are really what the French call livre de mémoire, so the book of memories. They recorded everything that was going on in the village, on the walls of the church. And this is nice because I think from here we really can understand what we were discussing at the beginning, the concept of cultural heritage. That for us maybe is a bit imposed from the top. We've learned that monuments of the past are important, but they are telling us why they are important, because they felt that space in that way. They felt that that space was representative not only for the single individual, but for the whole community. They felt that those spaces are the space to collect the value of the community. And this is what connects and make those places special. And so we can talk about cultural heritage that is not only cultural, it's social, it has a lot of them of meaning. But thanks to graffiti, I think you can really find the connection and to see further why those places should be important for us too. Not only because they have amazing frescoes or architectural structure that are important. And of course, commemorative graffiti during my field work. At a certain point, I decided not to stop in the modern period, but just to record everything because you never know. So here you see a graffiti in Panagia Disposito in Galata, UNESCO churches, dated 1974, no need to say, because as you see, is the record of the arrival of the invasion. Second invasion, 18th of August, because Omelis, so Melis, the guy that made this graffito in the entrance on the Virgin Mary, was from a village just behind the hills of Galata. It's like half an hour, maybe a little bit more walking distance. And he passed, and you can, reading the graffiti and seeing it, you can feel that finally he feels safe. He arrived, he reached the church, and he's so shocked that he needs to state, okay, we are here, something happened very relevant for the community. It's not my village, but I feel home, I feel in a safe place. And here we can see that, of course, religious places can also have, mostly churches, can also have these protective and aspects that we can better see with another kind of graffiti. So we saw the commemorative graffiti to record an event, but in churches, of course, we also have devotional and votive graffiti. I will show you one example because for me it's the most relevant one. St. John Lampadistis in Kalopanaiotis. We have the tomb of the saints, the relics of the saints, and since the beginning of the 18th centuries, all the pilgrims and worshippers visiting, not all, probably because the situation would be worse than that, a lot of pilgrims and worshippers going to the church left their names and the date of the visit. In this case, of course, they commemorate the visit, but the fact that they place their names so close to the relics of the saint is important because, as we said, I'm stating I was here and I'm placing my name next to the saint. So it's like I'm asking for protection. I want to leave a piece of me there and to get constant help and support. This is a practice that goes on today too with graffiti. Unfortunately, the Church of St. John Lampadistis, knowing there's this really very lively worshipping and cult of the saint that placed just in front of the relics a table with piece of paper and a place where you can write your intention, leave your name, and leave it there. But some people doesn't feel that is enough. So this is very recent. The first campaign I did in 2018 was not there, so I guess it's really the last 5 years. And you see that it's not only I want protection, I'm also asking what I want. And this, of course, is a more direct dialogue. I'm putting it, stating, I'm not just praying. I'm writing it on the tomb so you know, and also other people. I'm not writing it on a piece of paper and leaving it for the saint to see it. No, other people will see it. And this, in a graphic level, is, sorry, there was another slide before. Yes. This, in a different way, happens also with ships in Cyprus. Most of the ships we have are linked with this request of protection to God and to other saints. Of course, Cyprus, you can imagine how it would have been to do the crossing and go to the Holy Land in the past. And we really had also a dedicated project with the University of Cyprus, led by Professor Stella Domestica back in 2015, with a complete mapping of all the ship graffiti of the island, and it emerged how even in churches in the Troodos area we can find ships because people were asking for protection, and they were searching, of course, the most sacred or working, efficient saint or place to do it. So it's really evident the vocation of Cyprus and the connection of Cyprus with the sea. As I said, devotional and commemorative graffiti are one way of expressing what is a very common practice of tamata, that is not only offering something in order to ask for a miracle, for a grace, but also with all the comboschini and the personal items we are leaving next to icons or in relevant sacred spaces. People are leaving a piece of themselves, something that they were wearing and they live there. In the same way, writing has this power of self-affirmation and representation. A third, we don't have much more. The third big family of graffiti we studied, we found we could group so far in Cyprus are ritual protective graffiti. I needed a while because they have been extensively studied for the UK, but when it comes to ritual and you are an archaeologist, you're always scared because there's this sort of joke like if you cannot explain it, it's ritual. So we try to avoid this. I really, really try to find other explanation, but weirdly, it seems it works as it works in the UK, for example. I mention in the UK because it's where they had extensive fieldworks. They have studied it for years. They have also, lucky, written evidence saying that, the 5 pointed stars is a strong protective symbol against the demons, because demons and all geometric figures that are enclosed, because it seems that demons, at least in the north, are so stupid that if they get a line, they start and continue following that line. So they stay trapped in these symbols. And these symbols are usually found in entrances or in weak point in liminal spaces. So near the doors, near the windows, you see Iusus Omnes in Galata is in the apse window. So where there's this passage between the outside space that is not sacred and the inner space of the church. Or, as in the first case of Archangelos Michael in Galata, near to saints, to powerful saints, in an attempt to help and support their mission in fighting the demons. Here too, for example, is the Dornice, so the passage of the Virgin, and is a weak moment where the soul of the Virgin Mary is taken by Jesus and held, and in that passage they have had stars to protect this passage, so this outing. And what I've tried to do here is to see if on other medium we have something similar. And I've started noticing that doors, benches at the entrances, wooden furniture, but also frescoes, the lower part of frescoes at the entrance of the apses or on pillars have these symbols. So, of course, it's just the beginning. I'm a bit borrowing the methodology from the UK and also basing a lot my consideration on their experience. I'm mapping, let's say, how this connection, if this connection could work. So I'm verifying the presence and distribution of symbols and the presence of this symbol in other medium, like frescoes and wood carving. Here, let's say, I would conclude the more traditional and quiet explanation. And of course, since I'm basically in archaeology, there must be also a bit of mystery in all of this. So we will start now the part full of question marks. That is more a question than actually something I'm stating, I'm supporting. So as we said, graffiti commemorative, can be devotional, can protect one space. But I need to admit that I also have vandalism. So, despite the fact that I'm against the general attitude that graffiti are vandalism, because vandalism is just a small part, for me, at the beginning was linked only with what's happening today. At a certain point, I had to admit that this kind of expression, let's say, made by scratches that cannot be considered a proper graffiti because it's not text, it's not a drawing, it's an interaction with the space, specifically with the figure. Being in the Orthodox tradition, I'm highlighting this because it doesn't happen often, or at least we don't have still extensive study for the West. But in the Orthodox tradition, Eastern tradition, where the image has such a strong power, mostly of the demons represented in churches has been scratched, cancelled. It's not very visible, the picture, but on the head of the two-headed dog holding the Lord of the Darkness, that is amazing. If you have any chance, go in Kanayamutullah, it's really... it has a cross and also a star on his head. So it's like they were not only cancelling but trying to annul his power. And of course, with demon, this happens also with donors that maybe at a certain point of they were not anymore the favorite, or they did something that was not appreciated by the community. And starting looking a bit in a broader way in what is happening on the church walls, I also, of course, met a very widespread phenomenon, again, not only in Cyprus, but in all the Eastern world, from Cappadocia, Turkey, and Greece, of course, the gouged eye. So the specific and the voluntary remotion of the eye of the saints. Sometimes also other parts, the hands and the tradition, when I start noticing and asking why, as I guess all of you did, it's the Turks that came to the churches and they were afraid, so they cancelled the eyes, so the saints could not see them. Again, the power of the image, even if they were frescoes. But then, at a certain point, there were some voices like also kids of the village saying, yes, they told us that the saints, if we do something naughty, the saints can see us, so we went to scratch the eye. And from a colleague working in Greece, she was able to find even a mention of an early medieval manuscript dated around the 8th century, where in the traditional medicine someone was suggesting to cure eye sickness with removing some parts of the frescoes, because, as we said, the image is so powerful that it's sacred, removing a small part and doing medicaments for the eye. It seems that sometimes beyond bandage, people were doing tea, drinking, and it's a practice that we know for mummies, for example, in the 18th centuries, they were cutting pieces. They thought in Europe now that they were powerful, they could cure. So this idea is not new. We don't have sources, and probably trying to talk a bit more with the communities, with the people around, listening stories that were going on in the families, we can get more information. So far, we don't have any clue, but so a lot of question marks, a lot of possibilities, and we need to verify. Something that also makes me think that something was going on, a series of holes. I needed to put a big picture in order to be clear that these are really huge holes made on the border of the altar in Aios Nikolaos Kistegis. This is also, it happens, I documented it at least in other 4 or 5 churches. So here clearly someone went there and scratched the material of the altar, gypsum, most probably, and we don't know to do what, but it's happening not only in one church, already in other churches, and of course more extensive checking probably will help us to find answer. Of course, the table of the altar is one of the sacred place of the churches where the liturgy is happening, so it's open to. So, and then mystery, and we open the last part. Feel free to suggest anything. So this so far is something that I've seen only in Cyprus, and usually this is a very crowded example, but as you can see, no text, no pictorial drawings, just random marks and signs. Then if you start watching and focusing a bit more, you start seeing that there's a sort of motives that you could describe in a sort of way, giving names. I'm using in between the names that I know constantly referring to the UK, but they really worked a lot. They have community-based field work, so they really documented a lot of material, but usually these are borderline because how can you tell? And most of these are clear and visible, but most of the times these are barely visible. These could be, you know, they are not accidental because accidentally you cannot make this kind of shape. Even in this case, and so you start seeing that the same or at least similar motifs are recurrent in different churches all across the island. I don't know what they are, what they mean, but I know that we need to start from a point. So first of all, I started documenting them because these are the kind of things that archaeologists and in general researchers are afraid to talk. Am I going to publish something that I cannot explain? So you don't find usually this kind, no, you don't find, not usually, this kind of elements. And since I cannot understand, I have no clue, as I said, I try to work it out in another way. So start considering where I find these abstract motifs. Most of them are inside the apses. No need to say that we know that apses are with the control access. So only the priest, the clergy can enter, men only. And so I would say that we have at least the social category that is responsible, if not of all of these, of most of these, without having any comments, it's bad or good or whatever. But as you saw, I mean, I'm going back to, no, sorry, I need to go back like this. Okay, I did something. Good, I blocked them. No. Okay, sorry, I messed up. No, so I was saying that they're not by chance, they are recurrent. I just had the last slides. I wanted to close with a bit of mystery. I wanted to go back, but it's not time. What we can see here is slideshow. Yeah, okay. So you go back. Thank you very much. You're welcome. So, yes, as I was saying, I mean, this is really, for me, indicative of the fact that you cannot ignore this kind of thing. Why? For what we said at the beginning, we may not understand it, but there were people there, someone that deliberately and voluntarily did something on the wall. We are not outside. They were not bored people without knowing what to do, that were just, passing their time. We are inside the apse. And I also like to use this example in between because this was a sort of rescue plaster. When the church was restored by the Department of Antiquities, and we're talking about at least 10, if not 13, 15 years ago, I got a call and can we send you a picture? You tell us there are some scratches on the wall. Should we keep the plaster? And without knowing what it is, I said, of course, because we need to understand what it is. We can remove it at a later stage. This also to let you understand how the understanding of the Department of Antiquities here, that it's really heartwarming for me. Yeah, so said that, I would close with a bit of mystery, as I said, and is it working? Saying why it is important for me to study, to document and study graffiti, because each single sign on the wall is a trace of a person. You see that's the picture of the invitation, of the lecture. You can count how many people interacted with that surface. And that surface, that specific part is like 50 by 30. Can you imagine inside the whole church? So it's really having in front of us a whole community, people that across the centuries put one sign next to the other and left their mark and tells the story of how they were perceiving and seeing that place. They are telling us what that place meant to them. And maybe by studying graffiti, I hope that they will also help to better understand the meaning of our cultural heritage, to get a better understanding, to see how the different communities were living together in Cyprus, were sharing the same spaces, even the same religious spaces, across the centuries. And with this, I conclude. I think, yeah.
Thank you, Gaia. That was most interesting. Do we have any questions?
I'm just curious about, as they're thinking about, are you able as an archaeologist to distinguish the time frame, the carbon date of the graffiti versus the original?
So,
Do you understand my question?
yes, of course, it's one of our issues. So, of course, it's very easy when you have a date. Unfortunately, it's not always the case. And then there's different ways. So, paleography can help with the text, a sort of how can I say, a stylistic analysis for pictorial graffiti. So seeing is not, it helps more in Europe, here in Cyprus. For the ships, for example, you don't have a date, but studying the characteristic of the ship, they were able, most than me, to define more or less the century. So you can give the first element, of course, is always the support. If you know the chronology of the support, it's, of course, later. For what concerns all the mystery part, let's say, it's here. I am lucky enough because these, from the Tinius Favoros in Pelendri, these graffiti, they are not only these, and they are really abstract. They stand on a layer on the first layer of the apse that is dated at the 12th century. We know that on the 14th century, a second layer has been added. During the restoration, the Department of Antiquities removed the second layer, so the graffiti underneath are visible. And I'm so lucky that I know that those graffiti are in that time span, but also those kind of motifs started at least around the 12th, 13th century. Then I cannot, say more, but there's a lot of things you need to.
Just curious, as somebody who studied photography as a young archaeologist, sometimes we would find inscriptions or graffiti that were directly interacting with each other. Like I think one from the island of Lesbos, this guy was like, "I was here and I did this," and then somebody else commented like, "Oh, I was here and I did this too." Like, have you found any interesting examples of sort of direct interaction with graffiti?
Between graffiti?
Yes.
No, based on text, no. What I see mostly, I would say, are, for what concern at least text, are copies. So there's, for example, on the fresco, the name of the saint, and they are copying it. It happens also with drawing. So we have the image of a saint, and they are drawing it underneath. But a clear, yeah. No, I know about this for Pompeii and Herculaneum, but the Roman world is much more. Something else I didn't say because I give it for granted is that it's not that they were drawing because they didn't know how to write. I think we can skip this because if we open our phone and we go on our WhatsApp chats, I mean, if people in the future will take our everyday communication and see that we mix text, thinking about my son is not even text, text and whatever. I mean, they think we were not going to school, we were not educated, and our language ability of communication were very basic. So, yeah, just to.
Do you think that if you write something today, at some point, some humans will interact with our? If we write today something, or at some point someone like we do now, someone find
Well, actually, there already someone. I'm looking at him because it's my. So Konstantinos Avramidis, he's studying, one of his field of expertise is contemporary graffiti, and he's already studying graffiti. I think things in the contemporary world goes faster due to many facts, because all the work goes faster, but also graffiti, while they could write one on top of the other, and we're still able to see what is on the bottom and what is, it's a bit messy sometimes. When you do with spray or contemporary graffiti, you just cancel what is underneath. So there's different projects, one also in Vienna, documenting all the graffiti along 30 kilometers of graffiti along the Danube. And it's like they are really rushing and trying to document everything. So we are already studying our graffiti today. So definitely in the future it will be.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for the talk. Very interesting. I don't know much about graffiti, so I believe it's basically what it is very well. So, two quick questions. So the first one is, you mentioned, I think I wrote that, but you said from the mid-19th century onwards, we would down more graffiti than useful. And so the question is, I don't just correct that. If it is, how do we know that? Is it just like from the documentation of like people not saying that it's about graffiti in the past? And the second question is about artificial intelligence and whether there are systems where they can see that through more easily with AI.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure I got rightly the first question. So you were asking, I was mentioning mid-19th century, that is when the term graffiti was invented, and they start studying ancient historic graffiti. Of course, back then, graffiti were going on too. So we have Flaubert, Butler writing too. But this goes from prehistory, different ways, different tools, different reasons, but you can, and I think it's something so deep-rooted in the human nature, the need to interact with the space, that it will go on. So there's the distinction is based, of course, messages, kind of communication system, but and the second, artificial intelligence. So I know they gave it a try with text. Is easier. There's one main issue, that is the fact that nothing is standardized with graffiti. So you really, I asked a couple of times, and they said, if you have material, we can train the machine. As I said, I have tons of material. Now we just finished a project. Only on the 10 UNESCO churches, we counted nearly 2,000 graffiti, and we have 120 churches. I have material, but it's not always the same. So it's not a standard form, not here, not even in text. So it's really, no, at least at this stage, no. But I would love to. Really.
Hello. I was really like intrigued by one comment you made before when you were presenting about like how certain types of graffitis like might be considered vandalism, and like how you like stand uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the middle or something.
Okay.
My question is there like anything near a consensus within like all archaeologists on whether we, like as in our current generations, can like interact with artifacts from like 1,000 years ago? Was like the consensus was like to like go there and like just scratch my name on a 1,000-year-old monument, if that's like acceptable, like for future generations to study that, or if it's like something that we must preserve no matter what.
Thank you for the question. Of course, this is the one of the issues of graffiti, big issue, because you cannot. How can you? I mean, graffiti are condemned. You cannot write. You cannot do graffiti because they are indeed. I mean, they are interacting with the monument. So nowadays, probably even more than in the past, because with color we have a lot of issues. It's a huge problem because, from my point of view, usually people says no, graffiti should be forbidden because, they're not useful. They don't. They gives us so much information. Maybe street art in certain point, under control, and so on. One, I think you cannot stop the human from making it. And there's no way. We will find a way, we know it. Second, of course, from my point of view, we are losing a lot of information, canceling, and I mean, of course, we have this concept of cultural heritage, so the reduction of graffiti on historical monuments is drastic from what was before the 19th century or even a bit later. And this is good for the monument, of course, but we are losing, but it's part of the time we learn to interact with the monument in a different way. So also the fact that there's churches, there are places where perfectly intact, I don't find graffiti. Of course, that place was not a place that was felt like where people could feel comfortable of making graffiti. Could be. There's we did a project on underground built heritage. Nearly you find graffiti everywhere. In the mines, it didn't. In the quarries, sorry. In the quarries, you didn't find. We never found graffiti. So I think it's the function, different elements that play roles in this. You cannot stop it, and I said it's a big issue because this is also what prevents graffiti to be, on one side, recognized as a discipline. We don't have contemporary graffiti are most likely than us. Historical graffiti are not a discipline. There are random people studying it scattered across Europe, but mostly doing something else and also dealing with graffiti. There's no methodology, there's not standard, and I tried to talk with the UNESCO to see, how can Pompeian graffiti, we have Roman writing, everyday writing on the walls, not be preserved? What do you preserve? The monument. It means that, for example, in Cyprus, we need to put under preservation 100, declare protected 120 churches or every church with graffiti. You cannot do it. Intangible. So I said, okay, we cannot go for the tangible, we go for the intangible. You need to protect the practice that you can document. Perfect, from prehistory up to today, where's the problem? But you also need to be sure that you foster the continuity of that phenomenon. That's an issue. So it's a tricky situation. And again, I'm passing. Sorry, Constantino.
Thank you very much. It was very enlightening. I have one comment concerning another type of graffiti which relates to the religious struggle. Because when we were visiting certain, the same one, churches in the mountains of Cyprus, we seen several defaced groups of apostles, especially Arians, for example, if I remember correctly. Do you have any comment on that or just comment on that? This is a very intriguing point, the religious struggle.
Yeah. So for what concerns the faced saint, I think you can. There's a lot of saints. I didn't focus. Could be something interesting also to better understand if there are specific saints that are, object.
There were even comments.
Okay, but here in Cyprus.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. No, I don't. Modern?
No, I don't think so, because,
Okay.
Arians, that was like
Yeah.
so it's pretty old.
Okay.
Some of the apostles, some of the saints, and sometimes even a group. That was very amazing.
Yeah.
Seeing
No,
every detail.
Yeah, if you start, sometimes you can.
But the thing is, not all of the walls were defaced.
No, specific place. Yes. But some, even when they deface figures, usually is in specific points where they want to.
The pattern defacing. Okay, that's
Yeah,
the other point.
yeah.
Villagers probably need something about the person. That's why they deface it.
Yeah.
But for the religious.
No, what I see, I would say it's on the contrary. I see a lot of coexistence of different religious communities sharing the same space, feeling. No, so far I don't recall any. Yeah. So no, I wouldn't say that I see. There was a case of Pirga where one graffito was taken by and large as a declaration against the Orthodox, but it has been reread by Scheibel and Scheibel, showing that it was not the case. The first reading was wrong. And no, we don't have, what I see, as I said, I have an amazing example, is one we use to enhance this aspect, Hagia Solomon in Paphos. In 50 by 30, we have a Greek, a Latin, and an Armenian graffito inside the apse around the hand of a saint.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really...
It's more unified.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for this most fascinating paper. On the topic of facing figures, there is, to my knowledge, at least one case in Panagiotis or in Paphos where there's a fresco in a tomb by the church, and it seems like the eyes of a figure have been deliberately removed, and that figure is most probably in fact a king and not a saint. So I'm wondering whether the people who removed the eyes thought that it was the same and just removed them, or maybe kingly eyes also had. Do you know of any similar cases?
No, I don't recall it. I should check it. I believe that it could be a sort of misunderstanding, or maybe we know about the thaumaturgical power of the French dynasty. I don't know if there's something comparable.
Any Spanish people who died in Papa?
Sorry? Yeah. No, so, yeah, no, usually they are safe.
Eric Lindenberg was Eric the Good.
Yes, the virtues.
If I can answer that, they used to pull out the eyes of saints and good people and eat them, dilute them in water and drink them. This is what our villagers used to do, believing that they would be therapeutical. We say that I was a Muslim that put out the eyes, but that's not exactly true. It was the villagers that believing that the eyes were therapeutical, and they did it to the saints and people the good. Everybody is carrying the good. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for your presentation. With the exception of your very first slide, which included an image of Banksy, that all of the rest of the images have been made with incised tools, including the Aboriginal type one that we're looking at most recently. I'm just wondering then, given the fact that graffiti was coined in the mid-19th century, and spray painting, and that would not have been around at that time. How can we really equate that type of what we see as vandalism or destruction and that with a more genuine kind of interaction with the different sanctuaries or places or that people have been? I mean, to me, it's just two totally different worlds, and there is an international law which criminalises certain types of graffiti on monuments. I think just touching on this here. And so at what point does it become a crime? Thank you.
Cannot say. Yes, I mean, it's, based on, I guess, the culture of the country, the decision of the country, of course. And there's a lot of different reasons why. I mean, we are really losing most of the very important events of the last century, even 50 years, lost a lot of information because graffiti were cancelled. Black Lives Movement, the Polytechnion in Athens. Because if you don't document them, so for example, again, the UK, what they do is to document and then remove. At least you have a documentation of that. There's picture, I'm thinking about cases where, okay, it's vandalism, but the Reichstag in Berlin after the fall and the passage of the Russian army, it was covered, fully covered with graffiti. Some of them are still preserved. Most of them are visible in picture. And I mean, the amount of information is really, if you think, not even reading the newspaper, you can have the real feeling of what was happening. Graffiti are the most immediate and not filtered way of expression and communication, even in a violent way. That's why it's difficult to tell. I understand that you need to protect and to prevent this, even with the football teams that are for me the most inexplicable things. I mean, okay, with your team, like, don't need to shout it out in all the walls. But again, it shows how the supporters can push themselves from any point of view. First of all, aesthetically, and then yeah.
It was inherited from the past. Remember, in Byzantine, the chariot teams were the same.
Yeah, the Roman time too. I mean,
it's just the same. Madness.
Yes, yes. Something again.
Graffiti, which has
in Venice too.
Some kind of traditions which are really essential, like the election candidate, and then somebody added these stupid in the normal words.
Yeah.
It was much more derogatory.
Sorry, I just have a follow-up comment, because I'm from Ireland, so the north of Ireland, we have, of course, all of the very famous political murals, documenting the troubles and that. I mean, at what point could they be considered graffiti or not? This is, like, what is the transitional point between something that has no visual narrative or text to it, and the image then, at what point does it become graffiti or
Corpus, please.
Is that also not
Corpus, please. You came.
You could say that graffiti can be used as an umbrella term, which encompasses the murals, the street art, all the way to encompass ancient divinity and so on. So there are also more laternalia, all sorts of different, if you like, typologies. When it comes to murals, it's not a matter of whether it is text or image, European or whatever. It's has to do with the tradition or lineage of particular practices that are more directly linked to faith movements in larger settings and in family spaces. So that's what makes, in terms of categorization, the difference between what would be considered as graffiti, or we could just say, instead of calling everything here graffiti, we could call it inscriptions, and that's pretty much the same. Or another differentiation, if we move to the material categorization of things, we call these inscriptions, we would call contemporary graffiti conscriptions, simply because they're not inscribed.
Right, yes.
And I'm growing with users understanding of how writing works. So I don't know whether it's.
Thank you.
We'll take one last question and then we'll continue.
Well, today's graffiti, not on monuments, but generally on walls in the street, I think it's recognized as a form of art, and sometimes it's beautiful with beautiful letters, colors, it's three-dimensional, and abroad they have exhibitions on graffiti. So it's completely different today as and sometimes it's like old movies that are being painted. So it's
Yes, Constantinos was saying there's graffiti can be considered mostly today because we see really a wide variety of things going on. Yeah. And but definitely there's a whole part that they are even, I mean, with Bansky and many other a piece of art, they can be sold, commissioned, paid. So even there might rise the question: are there still graffitis? Graffiti needs to be something that is more spontaneous and not so planned. Again, with the changement of the technology, then I think you cannot today really do graffiti without a planning. We have also some writers here, but I'm not going to ask them. But yes.
But I think even the ones on the walls, like the ones you showed me, that must be sometimes done accidentally, and they want to say that it's pretty difficult to paint anywhere, and you recognize true talent sometimes in this writing.
No, that's also, I mean, something important, because it shows you personal aspect of the society that otherwise couldn't be visible. Okay, at this point, we'd like to thank Gaia Trentin once again. Thank you to each and every one of you who came here tonight for this fruitful discussion and lecture. And we'd like to invite everyone to have a glass of wine where you can continue your Q&A over a glass of wine at the foyer. Thank you.